The Pharisees went off and plotted how they might entrap Jesus in speech. They sent their disciples to him with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you're a truthful man, and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and you're not concerned with anyone's opinion, for you do not regard a person's status. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not?" Knowing their malice, Jesus said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin that pays the census tax." Then they handed him the Roman coin. He said to them, "Whose image is this? And whose inscription?" They replied, "Caesar." At that he said to them, "Then repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." The Gospel of the Lord. My brothers and sisters in the Lord, one of the things we do when we come together as a family, with friends, with former classmates, with people that we know, is that we tell stories. That's a feature part of every family gathering. We like to tell stories. I remember sometimes when you're telling a story, there's your favorite part of the story. Sometimes if someone interrupts you, we kind of say, wait, let me finish. I haven't gotten to the good part of the story. I remember my grandfather too. He had some great stories, but some of the stories that he had, he would start laughing before he could finish the story because he found it very amusing, and it was frustrating because you wanted him to finish the story, tell me the story, and he wouldn't finish it because he would laugh about the story. And in a way, I was thinking that when we read Scripture, and certainly as we come to Mass, the Bible, the Scripture, is the story of God. So every passage is sort of like a story for us. It's like a family story. Actually, with Matthew's Gospel, as you know, the last few Sundays we've been hearing parables. This Sunday we don't have a parable, we have a story of something that happened to Jesus. And we certainly even use phrases that come from our family stories, namely God's stories, Scripture stories, like the phrase today, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God." We use that even sometimes in our day-to-day talk. There are phrases that we have used, and they come from our family stories about Jesus. And I was thinking that we always have our favorite parts of those stories. Like, you know, my favorite part of the story today, of this moment when Jesus was tested. They tried to test him. If you think about the question, is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar? Remember that Caesar was the emperor of the Roman Empire, and they were the oppressors. They were, in a way, they had occupied Israel. So they weren't popular in Israel. So the question was meant to trick him. There was no good answer. If Jesus would have said, yeah, pay the tax to Caesar, then he would have gotten in trouble with his people, with the Jewish people. If he would have said, do not pay the tax to Caesar, then it would have been perceived as a revolutionary, someone that wanted to bring down Caesar. Actually, the fact that he didn't answer either way, he gave a very wise answer. In a way, it shows the hypocrisy of his trial, because one of the things they said was that he wanted to be like king. He wanted to take over Caesar. He was one of those revolutionaries, and that was part of his trial and the reason for his crucifixion. But it's so false, because he didn't. He said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. A perfect answer. They couldn't say anything to that, and they couldn't kind of like attach a label to him. So, but you know what my favorite part of that passage is? Is the fact that he asks for a coin. Did you get that? You know, here are the disciples of the Pharisees and the Herodians, actually a group that they were at odds with each other. So they already were manifesting some tension there, but they come with a wonderful question to trick him. And the first thing Jesus asks is, give me a coin, show me a coin. So that means to me that he didn't have a coin. You know, it could have been like, well, let me pull out a coin here and I'll show you a coin. But he didn't have anything. And it touches my heart, because Jesus was simple. He was poor. He didn't have anything. Actually, he didn't carry the bag for the needs that they had. So he was totally detached of that. And I think it probably was a little embarrassing to the Pharisees. Remember, this is the Roman coin. So here are the Pharisees, Jewish people, and they're carrying those coins. So they get the coin from their own pockets. And this was typical. If you go to the Holy Land today, if you go to Israel, any museum, they would have coins of the Roman Empire. And that was the thing. You see, every emperor, every Caesar, the same thing. They would put their face, they were mint their face. That was the image on the coin. And you have all kinds of emperors with their coins, and they pull out the emperor of the time, that would have been probably Tiberius, and they have a coin with Tiberius's face on it. And Jesus asked them, whose image is in the coin? And of course, they knew it was Caesar's. And then he says the answer that we have heard. But you know, as I like the fact that he didn't have a coin, that's my favorite part of the story, Jesus in a way is telling us, go a little deeper into the story. You know, there's something more there, not just a wonderful answer that he gave, not just that he didn't have a coin and he was poor and simple, but whose image, whose inscription? And they rightly say Caesar's. And then he says, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. In a way, he was hinting to us to recognize whose image we bear. And as Christians, we know that we bear the image and likeness of God. That's the whole point. See, we were created in the image and likeness of God. Not the image of Caesar, not the image of money, not the image of the world, but we were created in the image and likeness of God. Actually, you don't have to read too far into the scripture, into the Bible. Actually, you only have to read one chapter in the whole Bible. And you will hear that, you will read that. God created us in his image and likeness. And yet we see a world that is so divided. It's not recognizing the image and likeness of God in others. And if we would only do that, Jesus is pointing at the fact that if we would only do that and recognize that, we would have a very, very different world. And you know what? He calls the disciples of the Pharisees and Herodians hypocrites. But that's so easy to just look at them and say, oh yeah, they were hypocrites. You know, we can point the finger real easily. But I got news for you, and don't take it as offensive. But my brothers and sisters, we are all hypocrites. We are. That's the way of the world. That's a human tendency. We live like that. At the highest level and at the lowest levels, we don't treat everybody the same. Actually, sometimes it even helps us as a theologian. I use that sometimes, you know, the fact that it helps us to explain some topics in theology. For example, when I give a baptism seminar, One of the things we talk about baptism, what does baptism do? Remember? What is the first thing we always learn in the catechism? Baptism erases, does away with what? It ends with sin. Original sin. You see, original sin is not a personal sin. A baby that is baptized doesn't have any personal sin. Original sin is a tendency, is an inclination. We inherited it from our first parents, from Adam and Eve. And why was it so bad? Why was original sin so bad? Because they had it all. Adam and Eve had everything. They saw God. They talked to God. They walked with God. Scripture tells us they walked with God in the beautiful breeze of the evening. They could speak to Him. That's why original sin is so serious, because they had everything, and yet they messed up. They disobeyed God directly. Original sin is so serious because it was a direct sin against God, who had given them everything. You see, let me give you an example. If I would walk out the doors of the church this morning, and somebody in the neighborhood doesn't like me, and he would throw me a tomato and hit me on the head with a tomato, what would happen? What would be next? Well, I could do some things. Certainly, I could call the police. I could actually, I've studied law. I'm a lawyer, so I could claim and bring a suit on the battery. That would be a battery tort. So I could do that. Probably the police would come, and that would be resolved rather easily. Father, the man is not well. He's having, just forget about it. That would be it. Now, suppose that the one going out of the church would be the governor of the state, and somebody would hurl a tomato at him and hit him. I think the consequences would be a little different. That man will be tackled. He will be handcuffed. He'll be taken to the police station. They would want to find out more about what happened. It was the same thing that happened, right? Just somebody threw a tomato at somebody else. But one was me, the other one was the governor of the state. A simple parish priest, the governor of the state, they deal with it very, very differently. If the Pope would call me today, which he won't, but suppose the Pope would call me and say, Father, I would like to come to your parish tomorrow. What do you think I would tell the Pope? Oh, Holy Father, I'm so sorry. Tomorrow is my day off. I can't welcome you in the parish. Or would I say, even if I had a family funeral, I have a family funeral. No. I would call my family and say, guess what? The Pope called me and we have to change the time for the funeral. We don't treat everybody the same. We don't. It's part of human life. We live like that. And Jesus is saying, if we would only recognize the image of God in everyone, we would act so differently. We wouldn't mistreat people. We wouldn't need to look for a prostitute to have a time of pleasure, because by doing that, we would be treating somebody as an object. We wouldn't be treating that person as someone made in the image and likeness of God. I wouldn't abuse of children because I see the image of God in every child. I wouldn't cheat in school because when I cheat, I'm downplaying myself the image and likeness of God. So everything would be affected by what I do. And Jesus is asking a very important question. Whose image is in the coin? And then he's reminding us, whose image were you created in? And if we could only remember that, that could transform our world. That is the great challenge. It is a God who is calling us to recognize who we really are. And that is the true meaning of the passage today. So I still love the fact that Jesus didn't have a coin. And it is, when I read that passage, I love that. Show me a coin. He didn't have one. He didn't pull into his pocket to pull out a coin. But the deeper meaning is more important. To remember in whose image we have been created, and to live up to to that